Morning, everyone. My name is Mehran Fardis. I'm an immigration attorney based in San Diego, California, and I practice immigration all over US and basically the entire world. Today, I wanted to talk to you about a very common subject I get questions about. How do I get a tourist visa to come into US? It's a very common matter. A lot of people in the world go to a US consulate or embassy to get a tourist visa. Most common issue is that people think it's a simple process. You just go to an embassy and ask for a visa, and you meet an officer and you get a visa. But that's not how it works. I'm going to first say what the steps are to even file or request for a visa to begin with, to meet the US consulate officer or an embassy officer. The second step is how to prepare and what type of questions to anticipate when you speak to the officer. So let's start with the procedural stuff first. How do you even get a visa? To get a visa, you have to go on State Department's website. And I can provide the link under this video when you guys are watching this. The link to State Department, and you look for a form called DS-160. DS-160 is a form you have to register for. You put your name, credentials, and then you get into a page of 7 layers of questions. So these are very detailed questions about yourself, your life, where you've been in the past 5 years, if you've had any international travels, if you've been to other countries, you know, your parents, where did they live, what's your address, 5 years. It has to be very specific. Make sure you know what you're answering on these questions. When you meet the US officer at the consulate, the officer has these answers in front of him. And often they ask you a question about these questions you answered on your DS-160, and people don't remember, they answer wrong, and the officer thinks you're lying. So make sure you know what you're writing here. Print your answers, write them down. Remember what you said here, because it's going to take 3-4 months after you fill out this form for you to meet the officer. You may forget what you said. That's the step one. So you fill out this form correctly. Everything on this form has to be done correctly. The next step is, once you completed the DS-160, you kick back to State Department website. State Department now asks you, where do you want to go? To what city, consulate, or office do you want to go for your interview? Then you have to designate. You have to find that city's consulate. You go and make an appointment on that city's consulate. They'll tell you a timeline. This is the timeline. There's also a place on State Department's website that tells you how long or how much time it takes for each consulate to give you a visa right now. Some cities like Abu Dhabi or Dubai take about 500 days. Some places like Oslo, Norway takes 2 days. So make sure you see where you are and how far it takes for you to get an appointment. This step is another important note to notice. People do window shopping when it comes to a consular visa appointment. I had this guy contacting me last week from Nigeria, and he's asking me if he can go to a US consulate in Mexico. And I say, you know, Mexico is kind of far from Africa. How do you want to get there first? He said, well, I read that somebody told me in Africa it takes 2 years and in Mexico it takes 50 days or something. So I went with him through the State Department's website to see how much time it takes in the country that he was and how much time it takes in each different consulate in Mexico. First, the timelines weren't that different. In fact, Mexico was longer because a lot of Mexicans coming to US. Secondly, this is already a problem for a US officer. So when you are living in Africa and you go to Mexico to get a tourist visa, it kind of gives the message like you're not really going as a tourist, you have a different agenda. A tourist is relaxed. A tourist has time. You're not really, you know, pressed in time. You don't have to get there tomorrow to, you know, for a visit. You know, you kind of plan things a year ahead. You know, you have your time laid out for an interview, and then at some point you meet the officer. If you're rushing into things, you're eager to see an officer, if you're trying to get to an embassy fast, that already tells the officer, why is this guy rushing? Are you having a different agenda? Do you want to go to US really as a tourist, or you have another plan? You want to go there to stay? This already starts the conversation with you being on a defensive line. So before you forum shop, trying to find an embassy that's has less wait time, If it's not near you, let's say you're in, I don't know, let's say you're in Abu Dhabi, I'll just give you an example, in UAE, United Arab Emirates, there is another US consulate in Dubai, which has a little less time. And that's about an hour and a half, 2 hours from Abu Dhabi. That's feasible. If you're in one of these cities, you can go to a different city. But if you are in Africa and you want to go to Mexico, be mindful of that. So you find your forms online correctly. Everything has to be done correctly. Don't make stuff up. If you don't have the answer, don't answer, but don't make stuff on your forms. Don't answer wrong things because you think you have to say something. You got your appointment with the US consulate somewhere near you, or if it's far from you, explain why you're there. Hey, I had to be in Spain for other reasons. I just got my appointment there. That's understandable. You have to have a good explanation. Then it comes for the time of your interview, and that is the critical moment. You have about 5 minutes with this US officer, and this 5 minutes will determine, in fact, the first 30 seconds will determine if you're going to get a visa or not. This is no different than a job interview. Imagine you're going to get a job and you really want to get this job. What do you do for a job interview? Do you get there late? No, you get there on time. You get there early. How do you dress? You don't go with pajamas to a job interview. You dress well. You dress well for a US visa interview. It's you're asking them to give you something. It's a service you're asking for. They don't have to give you a visa. Make sure you dress well. Make sure you get there on time, 30 minutes. Well prepared. So you look good, you're on time. These are two important things. Now, what do you take with you? Any document that is relevant to your trip. Obviously, your passport. Any plans you have for your trip. You need to be very specific about what you want to do in the US as a tourist. A tourist visa means you're going there as a tourist to hang out, to see friends, to see sights, and come back. Just like a job, when you go for a job interview, what do you tell the interviewing officer or the interviewing employer? They ask you, what do you want to work here? Well, I want to work here because this is a good job and this is the income and this is close to my house and all that. You have to give them reasons. You give the same reasons to your US officer. Here's my plan. I always wanted to see New York City, and Empire State is on top of my list. I have a picture of Empire State on my folder. Here it is, printed out in color. On top of your folder, you have a color folder with you. So the moment you meet the officer, you put that folder in front of the officer. It's organized, it has tabs, colored pictures, everything is on that folder. You print out your identity almost as if you were telling someone else exactly what you're doing on every day of your trip. Your hotel is booked, your place is booked, your addresses are there, your flight is reserved. Even if you don't have a visa, you can make some kind of an arrangement. I would like to stay at this hotel because it's only a block from Empire State Building. Here's the address. Have everything ready. Be as organized as you can. Put it in front of the officer before you start talking. Officer opens the folder. First thing they see is the Statue of Liberty, in New York City. Okay, there's an address on the bottom. That's where I want to stay because it's only a block. I'm not saying you're going to go to New York City and see, Statue of Liberty, but whatever is your plan, be very specific. The officer doesn't know you. The officer doesn't know your relative, doesn't know anything about you. You need to be specific. So have everything laid out in color. You give it to the officer. Now, the officer is going to ask you questions. Some of the questions are going to be strange. And you're asking yourself, why is he asking me this question? Just answer the question. Never argue with an officer. Never ask him, why are you asking me this? Just say yes, no, I don't know. If you don't know something, just say I don't know and stop. Don't go further explaining why you said I don't know. If you don't know something, just say I don't know. Short answers are okay. If the officer needs to know something more, they'll ask you, can you explain? Yes, here's the answer. You explain and stop. Make sure your answers are short. Keep your sentences short. Remember, US officers, US consulates, US embassies, Department of Homeland Security is maybe the #1 record-keeping entity in the world. They don't make mistakes. 99% of the time with records, they don't make mistakes. If you said something on your application 3 months ago and you're saying something different, they know it, they see it in front of them. If you have gone in front of the same embassy a year before and said something different, they have it in front of them. They're going to ask you about it. They're going to ask you a tricky question to see if you're still saying the same thing. I had this client a few weeks ago. He's married to a US citizen. So wife basically requested for him to get an immigrant visa from an office in an embassy. She called me and said, well, this guy was very distressed. They denied him the immigrant visa, which is very unusual. I'm like, why? And she said all this stuff on the phone. And let me see the records. So I look at the records, and State Department, basically the US consulate, is saying in the records, the person went to the embassy, told them that I'm married to this person, but that same person had gone to the same embassy 2 years before and told the officer at that time, asking for a tourist visa, that he was already married and has 2 kids. The officer asked him, are you currently married? He said, yes, to this woman. Well, weren't you married before? No. Well, you came to us 2 years ago. You said you were married then and you had 2 kids. No, I never said that. It's like he forgot that he said that, and he thinks the officers has forgotten about it. They don't forget this, all in the records. Even if you go to a different embassy, they have access to it. Even if you go to a different consulate, they have, even when you come to US, Customs and Border Protection has access to it. This information doesn't get lost. So be truthful, remember what you say, don't make stuff up, and answer questions short. And that's kind of the scope of a visa interview. The officer wants to know that you're going there as a tourist and that you're coming back. This is really the only thing on the officer's mind. So make sure you explain where you're going to go, what you're going to do, and when you're coming back. You don't need to make stuff up about your return. You know, I have this mother who's sick, the doctor's note, I have to come back. Just say the truth. I want to go to New York. I don't intend to stay in the US forever. I just want to see a country just like I saw Spain 2 years ago, just like I saw Egypt 5 years ago. I want to see this country and come back. And that's what the officer wants to know. No overwhelming affidavits, no overwhelming. If it's relevant, yes, but don't make stuff up. If it's related to your work, if it's related to your life, to explain why you need to come back, you explain that. And you need to show proof of funds. You need to show that you can pay for yourself while you're there. So you want to show you have enough money to buy your ticket, to pay for your hotel. Here's my bank statement. And then that's when I'm coming back. If there's someone inside the US who's basically giving you an invitation and allows you kind of to stay with them or cut costs while you're there, that's nice. But you still want to show you have enough money to handle your own matters while you're there. These are the things on an officer's mind. So you have to look at the things from that person's view. What does that officer want to know? What is that person's priority? How do I deliver that to them to get what I need? Don't go from yourself and say, I need this and I want this. The officer wants to know you're going there, you're coming back, you can pay for yourself, you're organized, you have a plan, and you have a life where you live. That's all they want to know. And if you deliver that, you should be able to get a US visa from a US embassy or consulate. Of course, you can contact our office. We can coach you. We can explain to you how things work. We can help you with the DS-160. It's a complicated form. We can also prepare you for the interview, make sure you understand what documents to take, how to prepare yourself, how to present the documents, and kind of how to answer it. We're not coaching you what to say, but we're telling you kind of stay calm and answer the question only. And I hope this was of value. I hope this was helpful. We're going to have more conversations about this, as this is a very common request for us, a tourist visa, a B1 or a B2 visa. And we'll discuss more as the questions arise. Feel free to share this video with your friends. We always look forward to hearing back from you with your comments or questions. And like the video if you did. And looking forward to speaking with you soon. Have a great day.